Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rekah Hakwadash, Barakatah. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well, and peace and salutations to Yakim out there pushing this word in truth. This is the Brother Rai with another video, and I'm going to be using an article from activistpost.com titled, "As Nation Debates Gun Control, U.S. Military Wants $716 billion for next year." As Americans debate domestic gun control following the mass shooting at a Florida high school last week, funding for military arms has evaded public scrutiny. The United States Department of Defense recently released its summary of the 2018 National Defense Strategy with little fanfare. And how convenient that the summary of this document was released around the time that school shooting happened. The first thing to note is how little media coverage the NDS has received. Upon analysis of the document, however, the reason behind this blackout is clear. From The Nation on Tuesday it reads, "The NDS is to government documents what A Nightmare on Elm Street is to family films. It's meant, that is, to scare the hell out of the casual reader." I'm going to start off in Psalm 55 and 21. "The words of his mouth were smoother than butter," which, as you can see with that school shooting that just happened, which was a godsend for the elites of Esau, the so-called white man. It's allowed them to bring up in the news talks of gun control, because the elites know that once things start popping off that the U.S. citizens aren't going to go along with it, and it would be easier to quell dissent for the U.S. as well as those NATO troops by taking all the guns away from the people. But war was in his heart, because with the release of that summary, you can see they're asking for $716 billion for the military, which includes guns and missiles and all that kind of stuff. So you can see that if Esau was really about gun control, they'd start tampering the military as well. His words were softer than oil. Again, if we get those guns off the street, we can save lives. And think about the children, as they usually say, yet were they drawing swords. Esau's getting ready for war. The NDS makes the claim that the global security environment has become more complex and volatile than any we have experienced in recent memory, despite the fact that the U.S. has well over 1,000 bases spread out across much of the entire world. If the global security environment has become more complex and volatile, even with the U.S. military present almost everywhere, perhaps that says more about the U.S. military strategy than it does about the global community. And with all those U.S. bases scattered across the world, they are causing problems in those nations, because those bases are spaced pretty strategically. So if a particular country has a problem with the U.S. or its policies, they can, through these bases, send the military after them, or they can fund terrorist groups to go and destabilize those particular countries that are causing problems for them. The NDS opens by explaining that interstate strategic competition, not terrorism, is not the primary concern in U.S. national security. This sentence alone seems somewhat like a slap in the face for the thousands of Americans who lost their lives believing they were fighting a war on terror, and the scores of innocent civilians who have also died since 2001 and the U.S.-led global war. But for those who have been paying attention all along, it should be clear that interstate competition has always been the primary concern of the United States, not terrorism. I'm going to go to Micah 2, start at verse 1. "Woe to them that devise iniquity, Slakia, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds," such as that fake war on terrorism, which they used as a cover for, as the article stated, to fight interstate strategic competition against nations such as China and Russia. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. And all the elites come up for these plans on how they're going to take over the world through secret meetings like the Bilderberg and the Trilateral Commission. And when they come out in the open with these plans, they'll give a cover story like global terrorism, so the people won't know how insidious the plans actually are. And they covet fields and take them by violence, such as going into other countries like Iraq and Central and South America back in the 20th century, and overthrow governments and set up governments that are beneficial to them, so they can covet the resources or the fields of those particular countries and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. And first and foremost, this is talking about Israel. When they were allowed to take us down, they took away our heritage and our lands. But when Esau goes into these other countries, they shit on those people's their culture and say it's backwards, and tell them that they need American democracy, which only brings madness such as feminism and being selfish and having that Aleister Crowley do as thou wilt spirit, and also turns everybody into faggots. And who are these interstate actors? The NDS makes no secret that the U.S. is primarily concerned with Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, lumping them all together as threats in one complete paragraph. And the points this document makes about these particular countries could easily be fitted to America as well. China is a strategic competitor using predatory economics to intimidate its neighbors while militarizing features in the South China Sea. And doesn't the U.S. use predatory economics against Iran and North Korea to intimidate them to get rid of their nuclear weapons program? And also North Korea is located in that South China Sea area. Russia has violated the borders of nearby nations and pursues veto power over the economic, diplomatic, and security decisions of its neighbors. And isn't the U.S. Violating the borders near Russia by starting a civil war in the Ukraine? As well, North Korea's outlaw actions and reckless rhetoric continue despite the United Nations' censure and sanctions. And as they say in this article, the United Nations is against North Korea's outlaw actions, but with the U.S. declaring Jerusalem to be the capital of that fake Israeli state, that was an outlaw action, since the majority of the countries of the United Nations didn't agree with it, and they're against it as well. Iran continues to sow violence and remains the most significant challenge to Middle East stability, but has Iran fomented civil wars in the Middle East and overthrown countries such as Iraq and now on the chopping block Syria? Despite the defeat of ISIS's physical caliphate, threats to stability remain as terrorist groups with a long reach through U.S. and Israeli funds continue to murder the innocent and threaten peace more broadly. According to the nation's David Surgeon, the lieutenant known as General H.R. McMaster, Trump's current national security advisor, would drop by when Surgeon, a prominent department alumni at West Point, taught history classes. Slack you, brothers. In 2015, McMaster gave us history instructors a memorable, impromptu sermon about the threats we'd face when we returned to the regular army, Surgeon wrote. He referred, if memory serves, to what he labeled the 2 big threats, 2 medium threats, and 1 persistent threat that will continue to haunt our all-American world. In translation, that's China and Russia Iran, and North Korea, and last but not necessarily least, Islamic terrorism. And honestly, if that isn't a lineup that could get you anything you ever dreamed of in the way of weapons systems and the like, what is? And this goes back to Psalm 55 and 21, where it says these countries continue to haunt our all-American world. When people think of at least Americans think of an all-American world, they think, oh, that's us spreading democracy and freedom in the world and giving people a chance to live by their own means, which, as it says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart, as H.R. McMaster said. And honestly, if that isn't a lineup that could get you anything you ever dreamed of in the way of weapons systems and the like, what is? So in the end, it's all about death and destruction, power, and control. According to Surgeon, the similarities between the hierarchy of enemies painted in the NDS referred to above and McMaster's lists are uncanny. The 11 defense objectives included in the NDS suggest that, as Surgeon explains, the U.S. is obsessed with hegemony, not defense. And I get the definition of hegemony. Leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. Number 5 on the list states that one of the U.S.'s objectives is to maintain favorable regional balances of power in the Indo-Pacific, Europe, the Middle East, and the Western Hemisphere. And they like to make it sound nice by saying favorable regional balances, making it seem like they want everybody to get their fair share in these particular regions. But as what we just read with the definition of hegemony, it's all about dominance and lording over these other countries and regions in the earth. In case anyone doubts the true objectives of the NDS, the document also states the following: failure to meet our defense objectives will result in decreasing U.S. global influence, eroding cohesion among allies and partners, and reduced access to markets that will contribute to a decline in our prosperity and standard of living. Without sustained and predictable investment to restore readiness and modernize our military to make it fit for our time, we will rapidly lose our military advantage, resulting in a joint force that has legacy systems irrelevant to the defense of our people. I'm going to go to Habakkuk 2, start at verse 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright. Slakia. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. And as you can see with this article, Esau, his soul's just not lifted upright in him, because all he wants is war and domination. Yeah, also, because he transgresseth by wine, Salakia, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And since Esau has the blessing of the sword, he definitely is a proud man, because he believes by his own hand he's taken over much of the world, and that he's just the number one guy. And as it says here, he neither keepeth at home, because he goes to all these other countries and takes them over, who enlarges his desire as hell, because once he's in those countries, he'll leave forces there to keep an eye on them to make sure they don't go against the U.S.'s wishes, and he'll take the resources as well, and is as death, because tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of people have died from U.S. wars in the 20th century up until now, and cannot be satisfied. Esau wants even more by becoming God himself, with that Mark of the Beast chip and this new world order he wants to create, which will fail, of course, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And Esau wants everybody to be just like him, because when he goes into these countries, he gets rid of their culture and then forces his culture upon them, such as democracy,